pleased to watch the evolution here, for example, of this gathering. You're getting down into the nuts and bolts, new faces, some old friends. Hearing the report from the regulators, what Steve said, $210 million in little old Oregon already. Things are happening. Although it's ironic that Donald Trump's point person on the drug war chose the week that California opened up the largest marijuana market in America, and the week that Vermont became the first state through the legislative process to legalize. To try and upset the apple cart, to attack state legal industry, to be able to cast a shadow over progress that is taking place now in 30 states around the country. I have been doing this a long time. I am excited about what you've done, what's happened with the public. I mean, when we first started this, it was 1 out of 3, maybe, in the polls that thought that we ought to legalize cannabis. We watched that move forward. The last polls I've seen, actually a majority of Republicans now support adult use. And if you look at independents and Democrats, the numbers are off the charts. One thing that has remained consistent is that regardless of how Americans feel about marijuana, they don't think the federal government should interfere with what states decide they want to do. That is our secret weapon, one of our secret weapons. You know, I've been going around the country, as you know, I've been campaigning on these ballot measures. Very exciting watching what's happened, and then the results. Actually, I would have spent more time in Arizona if I'd known we were going to get that close. We would have been maybe 9 for 9. But 8 out of 9 is not bad. And as I remind every audience, every interview I give, in the states where Donald Trump and cannabis were on the ballot, cannabis got a lot more votes than Donald Trump. We also, as you know, thanks to some of the folks in Colorado, have a very explicit statement from then candidate Trump about where he stood. And you've probably all seen the clip. He very clearly said the states ought to be able to do what the states are doing. And I think it's important to help candidate Trump remember what he said. Remember that millions of people who voted for Donald Trump voted for cannabis. And that we are watching all the dire predictions that the goofy folks that have been arguing against us for years, they've fallen apart. 30 states have moved into this space, including, I'm very pleased with what some of you have helped bring about in Oregon, Washington, Colorado. The sun still sets in the west. Big rocks haven't fallen out of the sky. Children still go to high school. What's happened is we've watched an $8 billion industry emerge, 200,000 people employed. We've watched the industry maturing. Some of you here have been on the front lines. I am excited about what we have seen in the last 5 years in Washington, D.C., having people from this industry making the case, the simple case, of what they want. They want to be able to pay fair taxes with a check. How hard is that? You want the federal government to respect the will of millions of voters from Maine to California. You want the insane prohibitions against clinical research on cannabis to be done away with. That restricts the opportunities we've got to mature the industry, to be able to develop important, effective tests for impairment. This is a critical issue. As you know, there are 20 million people a month who use cannabis. And many people, I've lost track of the number of people who've told me that medical marijuana has changed their lives. And it is totally mainstream. You want to make sure that the Veterans Administration, doctors, can talk to America's veterans in states where it is legal. But it's not just for our veterans who die too frequently from overdose, who have been given opioids at a frequency far, far in excess of the general population, and are denied a medication that can be transformative. It shouldn't be that hard. Well, we're coming into what I think now is the home stretch. I was appalled at what Jeff Sessions did, but the more I reflected on it, it may be a favor. As I've been campaigning around the country, I have made the prediction and a number of bets that this crusade is over in 5 years. Well, that was last year, so I've only got 4 years left. But I think if we all do our job, thanks to Jeff Sessions, we can cut that time in half. We've got people who are involved that have not been involved before. We have more media attention, and we are getting more people in Congress. You know, I've mentioned the Rohrabacher-Blumenauer amendment was easier to get into the continuing resolution than any other time that we've dealt with it. Congress is pretty much aligned. It's the best Congress we've ever had. Virtually every one of my Democratic colleagues, and now dozens of Republicans, are on board. But let's just lay it out. The Republican leadership would not even allow us a vote this last year on continuing it. Now, we're in reasonably good shape. As the continuing resolution has the provision. We have, if we ever get around to actually passing a budget, how quaint is that? It's on the Senate side, and we've got, as I mentioned, strong support on the House side. We've got a problem with some people in key positions who messed with us, who took my veterans access legislation that passed both the House and the Senate in last Congress and took it out in a conference committee. That has to change. Let me tell you what I'm doing, because this is probably an area that I'm spending more time on legislatively than any other. First and foremost, I'm trying to make sure that all my Democratic colleagues are in line. It's a huge percentage, but they're not all there, and I'm working to make sure that everybody understands these issues. Second, I have communicated with every man and woman running as a Democrat for Congress, and there's a gazillion of them. Lots of energy about these issues, how to talk about it, how it is important for them to take an unequivocal position. There's no problem politically if they do. I think there's a problem politically if they don't. I will go to my grave convinced that if Hillary Clinton could have given a coherent answer on cannabis, she'd be president today. And it wasn't that I didn't tell her, or that you didn't tell her. It's just skittishness. An inauthentic answer of something that she knew. And I think, frankly, she paid a political price. I want people this go-around who aren't with us, who aren't helpful, who aren't specific. I want them to pay a political price. I've zeroed in on a couple of people who have been extraordinarily unhelpful. We've already had a nice little billboard in Pete Sessions' district with a veteran asking why Pete Sessions doesn't want him to have his medicine. We are going to make sure that this is a political issue. And you need to make sure this is a political issue. Number one, anybody who's got a facility with customers coming in and out, there ought to be a little vote cannabis poster. There ought to be voter registration cards. This is not rocket science. And this motivates particularly young people. We need to make sure that that motivation is acted upon. Now you're starting to have a political footprint. People are starting to notice an $8 billion industry. You're watching what is happening. Some of the politicians are starting to come around. There ought to be some very specific conversations about where they stand and what they're going to do. Next, we need to flood Capitol Hill over the next few months with people from the industry. I will tell you, one of the reasons we're in a more powerful position than we've ever been is because people in today's cannabis industry have turned out in force. And it's making a difference. They're watching that the old stereotypes melt away. People today are serious business people. They care deeply about their customers and their product. The people I've worked with in Oregon and around the country really make a difference. We need to make sure that that new face of the cannabis industry is on display in Washington and talking about what the impacts are, having a cloud over financing, over banking, the impact of not being able to be taxed fairly. And you are powerful spokespeople, very powerful spokespeople. We're continuing with our bipartisan Cannabis Caucus. I mean, I don't like what the Republican leadership has done with this, but I have worked with pro-cannabis Republicans. Two of my co-chairs of the Cannabis Caucus are Republicans. If you would have told me 20 years ago when I'm working on this that one of the first co-chairs of our Cannabis Caucus would be an 83-year-old Republican from Alaska, I might have taken that bet. But Don Young is terrific. Dana Rohrabacher has been tireless. I took the 280E legislation that Grover Norquist, the famous Republican tax activist, appeared with me when we had our first press conference. Grover was there talking about how that was inappropriate. And we've packaged it and given it to Carlos Cabello as my partner now in the House. He's terrific. I saw Bree here a moment ago from Senator Wyden's office. Senator Wyden and I have introduced comprehensive legislation that would solve the problem. But I'm excited that there are now dozens of people who are coming forward with their proposals. We're encouraging them. We want more voices. As long as it's consistent and it's moving in the right direction, we think that's terrific. And we'll continue to build on that bipartisan platform. We need you to carry that, not just to Capitol Hill, not just having your little voter registration, not just having serious conversations with candidates when they pop up. We need you to be able to pull those people on the ground. Look at, I had 3 national industry phone calls in the aftermath of this confusion. One of the messages that we are delivering is that bring people from Capitol Hill to you. This is a congressional recess for the House of Representatives. I'm encouraging people to look at what the recess calendar looks like and use that time to invite members of the House and Senate across the country to come in and see what you do. Look at your business. Look at the commercial facilities. Look at the growing operations. Look at the retail. It's important. A lot of people are making a judgment who have no idea what you're doing. And the more they interact, I think the better off we're going to be. I hope that you are relentless in making sure that everybody in the industry meets your high standards. I have met people who take great pride, and a number of them use the term they want to be the gold standard. They want to be the best. We need to make sure that there is no area where people are stepping over the line. Selling product to minors is obscene. And we need to make sure that it does not happen in Oregon or anyplace else. And I know most of you are rigorous. I've watched you in action. But we've had some problems. You read about them here. That cannot continue. That's an open invitation to upset the apple. It'll come back to haunt us. You heard Steve talk about leakage of product. It can't happen. We've got to make sure that what I think we were able to put across in Oregon, which is, I think, the model legislation. We've got cooperation from the legislature, from the state regulatory agency. We've had industry leadership. We've got to make sure that we keep that commitment that we all made to the Oregon voters. This is the system. We're going to abide by it. And it's important that we do that. I want to thank you for your help, your encouragement, for what you're doing in an area that I've been involved with now over 40 years. If you would have told me in 1973, when we had our first bill that would have allowed 2 plants per household, that it would have taken 44 years to get where we are, I don't think I would have believed it. But if you would have told me 10 years ago about our rapid progress, the development, the movement, the public support, I don't think I would have believed that either. We're in a spot now where we can drag it across the finish line, where you can work with me so that I'm not a liar, that we get this done this next year. We can do that. Part of it, and I will work day and night to be able to make sure that the chair of the House Judiciary Committee is not Buck Goodluck from Virginia, who's not our friend, but Jerry Nadler from New York, who in '77 voted in New York to decriminalize, and who's been with us every step of the way in the legislation in Congress. These things matter. I will stop at this point. I will continue to follow through with you. We continue to want you to be able to provide our office with information that we need to know about. We need to make sure that we're moving, not just legislatively, but it looks like we've got shots in Missouri and Michigan. New Hampshire House of Representatives passed pro-cannabis legislation this week. We need to keep the pressure up on all of those. But accept my thanks, accept my commitment to work with you to make sure that we do what we need to do legislatively, politically, and with the public. Because I truly think our time has come, and next year we can get it accomplished once and for all. Thank you very much.